Hey everyone, this is Sharon, the founder of Self Care for Black Men. Going live tonight. Nice to see everyone out there, regardless of what time that you will be viewing this. And this evening, we have a guest. And we're going to be talking about conversations about disciplined children. All right, I do see my guests.
Hey,
Hey there, Eric. How you doing?
all right, how are you?
I am doing good, doing wonderful this evening. Well, I really do appreciate you accepting my invitation and doing this live.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be here and thank you for the invite.
Oh, yeah. And but before we get started, I always like to start off just kind of a centering moment. And so just pretty much one of my biggest thing in life, I kind of feel like we're always rushing and in and out of things, and sometimes we need to kind of release the energy or release ourselves from things that we may have just left, and to make sure we're focused on where we are now. And so, at the beginnings of all my life, I always do a centering moment. So, with you and everyone, I just ask to be in a comfortable position, and if you're sitting in a chair with your feet flat on the floor, align your back, relax your shoulders away from your ears, and gaze your eyes towards Mother Earth. And you can close your eyes if you like, and you can place your hands into your lap with your palms onto your lap. And we're just going to do 5 deep breaths. Slowly inhale through your nose. And exhale through your nose. Let's do that again. Slowly inhale and exhale. And do it at your own pace 3 more times. And gently bring your attention back to the surface. And gently open your eyes. And again, I like to do this mainly because, like I said, I kind of feel like our society keep us in that fight, flight, freeze. And so, and when it comes to self-care, it's about really being intentional. So in any opportunity that we have, sometimes we may not be able to always be that focused, but we can always take a breath no matter where we are. And so the more we practice it, then it can become more of a part of our life. Um, And so, again, I'm Sharon, the founder of Self Care for Black Men. And I saw your post. Pretty much what inspired me of wanting to do this live is that it wasn't really the video itself, it was a video of a man I feel severely disciplined. It's, a child using corporate punishment. And it wasn't that I was more, to be honest, more inspired by your response about the different things that you were saying in your response. And so I wanted to talk more about that. And, also to talk about, corporate punishment too, because I know that people have different views on that. And also, I work in mental health, and so I've seen it, what corporate punishment can do. I mean, I've experienced, getting a few beatings. And so, and we'll kind of talk about, as we go along, just the different effects it can have. But before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, my name is Eric. I am a father of four, going on five. We're due at the end of September. Um, I have a beautiful wife, Shayla, who is really my rock. I really thank her for a lot of things. She's been with me through a whole lot. And our family for now lives in Arizona. So, but we're here by way of Mississippi. Me and my wife are both from Mississippi, and I guess that may tell you, depending on how much you know about Mississippi, may tell you a bit about my culture or whatever. But that's the basics. We really try to focus a lot on our family as our family business is our family, is what we say a lot. So we focus a lot on raising our children right, or on loving each other correctly, and we also are budding entrepreneurs. So hopefully we'll have a lot more to offer you all coming real soon. But right now we're bringing life into the world.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I definitely enjoy, your platform anyway. And so, and like I said, with that one post, I just kind of feel like, even though when it was written and some of the things that we're going to discuss is based off that post, but when it comes to learning, it's kind of like people learn in different ways. So somebody can read something and you can say it, but sometimes somebody may pick up more about what someone says. And so I guess to start off with that video, what was the thing that kind of got you with the video?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Mississippi. I don't know if it's really different than all other places because I haven't been everywhere in America.
Hmm.
But I've lived here out west for about 5 years now, and there's a pretty stark difference in the way we view God and family in these two different parts of the world. So, without getting into the God thing, the family differences, one of the biggest ones was that I noticed a lot of people never, or at least they don't openly corporally punish their children. No physical punishment is involved in what they're doing, at least from what you can see. Whereas
Hmm.
in Mississippi, where I'm from, especially the time I'm from, because it might be changing a bit now, but from the time I'm from in Mississippi, we would get whippings in public. We would get whippings in front of other parents. We would get whippings from other parents. Like we
Hmm.
we had to act right around our friends' parents, our enemies' parents, because we lived in a place where unless a person was known by other adults to be someone who was extremely abusive, if they were a stand-up citizen themselves, they more than likely would have the right, especially after talking to your parents, to have whipped you or punished you in some kind of way. Um, in that time, I've gotten whippings. I didn't get a whole lot of whippings growing up because my parents didn't really lean on that a whole lot, but it was definitely part of the process. But I saw a lot of people get whippings. I know people who on every part of that spectrum, from really not having it used so much to really being abused.
Hmm.
So I've seen a lot of that, and then coming out here and seeing none of it really, I already had a lot of questions about whether or not I would use it with my children. I had a lot of questions about what kind of effect it had on me because, I'm pretty young. So like my coming of age brought a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
So these are things that I've been thinking through, and then coming out here and having children made it an absolute imperative to answer the question now. So once I saw the video, I felt I had come to a place where I had answers, and I wanted to share with someone else who may still be in that thinking process.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a really good point because I know I don't know how long ago it was several months ago, there was another video that came out. It was a black lady with a child. I think the scenario was in a school or something where the teacher had called the parent, thinking that, just kind of thinking that the child was going to get in trouble, but not realizing that it was really abuse. And then the conversation, similar conversations kind of came up where you were talking about where I would probably say, it was probably kind of half and half. Some people were saying, oh no, yeah, corporal punishment, yes, yes, how they're going to learn. And then others like, no, they're not going to, that is not right. Because you have some people who are totally, against it, pretty much with my stance. And let me say this first, I have no children. So I want to say that first because sometimes some people kind of think if someone has no children, they don't have any opinions or things like that. But like I said, I work in mental health. I was a child myself, so I know the impact of it. And I'm like you, I didn't have that many beatings, but I can distinctly remember the few times that I did. I can remember every time I got one. And every time I got one, I didn't deserve it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, really, and I distinctly remember probably two times. One time was in school. And I never forget this. And this was in Virginia Pack Elementary School, Columbia, South Carolina. And I'm saying that because, yeah, I want this teacher. I don't know if she's still alive, but everybody remember Miss Abel. But pretty much there was this rule to check in. You had to turn your name around on this little card. I know that I turned my name around. I know that I did. But if you didn't, this was during the time too, you got a paddle. And not only that, it was kind of like it was second and third grade. And the way that was made, it was kind of like the second and third grade was kind of almost separate from the rest of the school. And so we didn't have to really go anywhere. And so we had our own auditorium. And so we met in the auditorium. So just think, this is a circle-like area. And so you had to go into the middle. And so they call your name and you get a paddle. And for me, for what I can remember, it wasn't even about embarrassment or anything like that. I think I was more pissed because I know I didn't do it. And then later on, I did find out a particular kid did turn my name over. So it's kind of one of those things as a kid, how do you take up to yourself? You're trying to tell somebody something. And I'm saying Miss Abel because she was one of those teachers that, quote unquote, consider herself, because we all had those type of teachers that don't play, that didn't listen, and just like, like for people who may advocate for themselves, they wouldn't use the word advocate. They'll say, rebellions. You know what I'm saying? But no, those were the kids who were not going to take your crap. You know what I mean? And because I distinctly remember two boys that she, really beat them. You know what I'm saying? But really, in my eyes, even at a young age, they were really just taking up for themselves. But my whole point in saying that is that sometimes because I'm a sensitive person, so sometimes if you don't know who you're dealing with, especially when it comes to a teacher or someone else, you don't know what kind of impact that have. And then even when it comes to my mom, again, I didn't get that many, beatings from my mom. I can maybe think about two, but even still, I'm not sure she realized she was raising a sensitive, kid, so you don't know the impact that can have. But anyway, but kind of just in saying that, It really does. It's kind of like people don't realize the impact that it has. And then I've also heard, and I really do believe too, um, and I'm just talking about the Black community right now. It's like that when it comes to the roots of some of this, it's like when our ancestors were enslaved. And one of the reasons that I kind of talked a little bit about how it was encircled because of the fact I remember seeing a picture of something, and it was, with our enslaved ancestors, and then everybody watching. You know what I'm saying? And when I saw that picture, it brought me back to the memory that I just told you about, and I just cried. I just cried because I'm like, they're doing the same thing, that, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway, kind of moving on again, but that's just kind of like the impact that corporate punishment can have and the different conversations. I guess you could say that we all really need to have.
Very much. Yeah, so I think you brought up a lot there. I'll start with the slave and race implications of it. So now that I know you from South Carolina, I feel like I can talk to you a little bit about how racism, especially, and I almost don't like to say racism, especially in the South, because it makes people feel like it happens more in the South, and it absolutely does not. But it does happen a different way.
Yeah.
There are different outward attitudes that you run into a lot more easily in the South. Um, so that was one thing that I appreciate my parents, especially my mother, for being against. Like I said, they didn't just let anybody whip us. It was people who they trusted, and the people at school was never the people that they trusted to whip us. So I remember growing up in the schools I was in, from like the second grade, they had a slip where you would sign, where the parent would sign whether or not they would allow their child to be paddled. And my parents never signed that slip. And I'm glad they didn't, because there are a few times when I had a few teachers who really just had it out for me, or who might have been responding too emotionally to a particular incident in the classroom, and I might have gotten injured, abused, or just emotionally scarred in those times. So I appreciate my parents for that. I'm very sorry for what happened to you, because that is something we really need to talk about, is how slavery informs this, not just from our perspective, like what we do with our own children, but who are we really doing that for? I
Yeah.
know a lot of parents who do the whipping, they make statements like whip them before the police do, which is that's a very defeatist statement. You've accepted that the police are going to whip them if they do something wrong. That's not at all correct. I don't care. I mean, if they did anything short of beating another person, they should not ever be beat by the police.
Hmm.
So this is something we shouldn't accept. We should be putting that energy into fighting against those things, but instead we accept it as reality and then parent our children accordingly. And I think that is completely out of line, and it's something that as a community we really got to address, that to stop playing into our own oppression on that front. So that's a very good point that you're making there.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And then the thing too, when it comes to that, I just lost my train of thought. What I was going to say. Oh, when you were talking about schools, and before we got on, I was doing some additional research, and they were saying, I know back in at least 2018, they were saying that there are still about 19 states that allow corporal punishment in the schools. And then they said, and then kind of going by what you just said too, going along with what you just said, in that in those schools of the South, that most of those states are in the South.
Mm-hmm.
So that correlates exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that at least part of the reason for that is, again, because in the South, there is, I won't get into census data, so I won't say that there's a black majority, but that is where the highest concentration of Black people and therefore Black children, Black students is. And you have a lot of those schools. Even though I was blessed to have a lot of Black teachers, and I know there are a lot of Black teachers, there are, for instance, I went to a school district that was the majority Black, but you had majority white teachers, white principals, white superintendent, school board. The people in charge making the rules were white, and the people delivering the education to us were Black. So that being said, I think that heritage of feeling like they have to watch us, keep us under control, keep us in a certain mental state, that didn't fade away with the Voting Rights Act or whatever.
Yeah,
Like that didn't
exactly.
fade away with civil rights. And so since we know some of these people are leaving work to go to Klan meetings, we really should be very careful we really should be way more active, especially across the South, in determining those types of rules, in showing up at PTA meetings, or showing up at school board meetings to really combat some of these antiquated ways of doing education that are still present. They still rule in the South. That's something I appreciate my parents for never allowing that. That's something I will follow in their footsteps doing, and hopefully take the next step to say, why is this still on the books? This really has to change, because we know that there are people who will use this to damage our children on purpose. I don't know Miss Abel, but if I had to guess, she's one of those ones who saw you. I mean, you call yourself sensitive, but what I really think it is that you're a leader, so that you when you feel things, injustices very strongly, you feel injustices very personally, even if they didn't
Hmm.
happen to you. And she saw that in you, and she didn't see it as sensitivity. She wanted to turn it into sensitivity, and that might be the reason that she gave you this really excessive punishment for a small offense that she didn't even prove you had committed. And I saw that happen a number of times throughout my school years and my young days too. So it's something we really got to step in on and make sure that if this is if this is something you believe in at all, you really have to control how it happens to your child. I would never allow anyone. I can't think of anybody I'm close enough with, not even my own parents. I can't think of anybody I'm close enough with who I would be okay with punishing my child in that way. Nobody.
Yeah, most definitely. And one thing, as a therapist, when I used to provide counseling therapy for children, one thing I used to tell people in that if corporate punishment was used, there are certain type of kids that corporal punishment is not good. And that's kids with emotional problems, kids who have been, traumatized or abused, or kids who have behavior problems. Because I have seen it. I've seen it where corporal punishment, it just exacerbates their behaviors, it exacerbates their symptoms, it exacerbates just everything. And especially because even like a kid, quote unquote, that may consider to be conduct disorder. Of course, we have to be careful. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But let's just say a kid is diagnosed with conduct disorder. And a lot of times parents said, I've tried everything and this, that, and the other, and their behaviors continue to increase. Yes, it will, for most part, it continue to increase. And we know that for some people, like immediately I would say for most kids, that will work. You know what I'm saying? But even still, you still don't know the long-term effect even one incident can have. Because even for me, the long-term effect that could have, because everybody's makeup is different. And I've also seen conversation. I saw one conversation on, I think it was on Facebook. It was either Instagram or Facebook. It might have was that incident that I was talking about a few months ago regarding that one kid in the school, and there was this, I think it was a female, and she was saying that pretty much corporal punishment saved her. You know what I'm saying? And maybe for some people it does. You know what I'm saying? Because they would say they were out of hand in this, that, but everybody makeup is so different. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Everybody makeup is just so different.
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, I've seen what you're talking about in my work because I worked in mental health too. I actually just stopped my job in mental health, and I've seen a lot of that. People who were deeply abused. Whether I mean, I think we think about sexual abuse and we're kind of ready to jump on that one, and we're a little less, especially as a Black community, a little less aware of what physical abuse can do. We make jokes about things that are really physical abuse. So I've seen a lot of that
Yeah.
from that perspective. But I've also seen it in my own children. Like what you're saying is so true. And I was talking with a friend about this today. We have to be very aware of the personality types and the people we're raising. One thing that me and my wife say all the time is that we don't raise kids. We're not raising any kids. We're raising adults. And we try to see them as the adults they're becoming. We try to
Mhm.
see their personality traits, what works and what doesn't work, not just from getting, modifying their behavior, but just what works in their education, what helps them pick up on things, just really knowing them as a person. And so I have a child, my oldest, whippings are very, very detrimental to his behavior. So I don't use them very much on him. I talk at length with him, and it's actually very challenging for me sometimes because there are times when I want to just do what I was raised on, and that's not necessarily whip you immediately, but that is maybe go to timeout or just dishing out a punishment without discussing it with him. And he is a person that will be seen by other people, like you said, as being sensitive, but he's really not very sensitive. He's very, very keen to what justice is. What is it? Why am I being punished this way? What was wrong about what I did? He wants that whole explanation every single
Yeah.
time there's a problem. Every single time there's not a problem, he wants an explanation all the time. So I have to
Yeah.
talk with him a lot. Whereas I have my second child, I can simply threaten a whipping, and he is very kind of judicial like that. He thinks about things in crime and punishment terms. So I mean, he actually remembers all the rules and the punishments for everything in the house, and will remind his brothers, "Don't do that. That's a two-leg whipping. Don't do that. You go to timeout. Don't do that. You
Mhm.
have to sit on your bed. Don't like." He knows all of those rules, and so since he operates that way, I he's 4 now, and I think I whipped him maybe twice in his life max, and that has all been very recent. And I'm gonna get to this in a minute, but you have to really. I'm gonna get to the 4 things that I think are important for corporal punishment to be useful at all. But I just want to piggyback on your point there that you really have to pay attention to what type of person you're raising to know
Mhm.
what extent, what amount, and whether or not corporal punishment is a type of punishment at all that will work on them. So if if you don't mind, I would like to get into those four
Oh
things.
yes, most definitely. Most definitely.
So I think as a community, we have to really have this conversation because to expect that we will just stop using corporal punishment completely is a little, I think, unrealistic with our heritage. And at the same time, I'm not sure it's really necessary for us to completely stop using corporal punishment. I do think it's very, very possible to raise very good people without corporal punishment at all. I think that's very possible. And if that's what you've chosen, that know that I don't think that you are a bad parent to anyone
Yeah.
listening. But with that said, I think that it would be nice if we found a balance. And so what I've come up with is 4 things that you really need to think about. Never punish emotionally, never punish mutely, that means without using words, never punish manually with your bare hands, and never punish excessively. So first, emotionally, I think I put that first because I think that's the biggest problem in our communities. We have a lot of unchecked emotions. So many of us need therapists. So many of us need different types of therapy for so many things that we've been through. And when you have children, they are a mirror into your whole life. I see me in every single one of my kids every moment of every day, and sometimes it's good things, sometimes it's not so good things. So when you see those, especially those not so good things, or when you see something that used to be good about you before it was ruined in whatever way by whatever person, that can really force you to deal with things that as a community we're still really stepping up to the plate of dealing with, especially therapeutically. And so I think with children, they can really force you to deal with things you're not ready to deal with and bring out emotions that you don't know how to check. And that's where a lot of the emotional discipline comes from. When you discipline emotionally, the child will miss the message because you probably never sent it. You whip them, or you, even if it's timeout, even if it's something as simple as taking their candy or whatever, you did it because of how you felt, not because of what they did. And that sends the message to them. It births a sneak, because it sends the message that what I did is not necessarily wrong. I just have to watch who I do it around,
Yeah.
watch the feelings or the personalities that I act in the ways I want to around. It creates a fake person. And I think a lot of the people who we have problems with, we say we hate fake people, we hate messy people or sneaky people. They were born in an environment, more than likely, that punished them emotionally, whatever that punishment may have been. So never punish emotionally. Be very judicial and logical about what punishment is coming to what child and when, for what reason. Second is never punish mutely. In the video, one of the biggest mistakes I felt he made, if you can find this video on my page. One of the biggest mistakes he made was to whip the child who had done whatever he had done. I'm guessing getting out of his chair, which is something that's way more likely for boys. As the studies show, boys will move around a lot. So you got to think about, like, is that something that's worthy of physical punishment, worthy of any punishment with boys? But he whipped the boy, I'm guessing, for getting up out of his chair and never said a word, at least from what we can see in the clip. And then he cursed at the child who was being obedient. So he whipped the child mutely. He never sent the message of, this is what you did wrong. This is
Yeah.
why you're getting this whipping. So what can the boy walk away with? How does he know what to do going forward? And I see that a lot too. People who just whip, or who just say stop, or you're not really taking the time to articulate a message of discipline and let them know what they should be doing. So never punish mutely. Third, never punish manually. That was, I said, the second one was the biggest. This was actually the biggest mistake he made. He put his bare hands on the child to whip them. Our minds, we don't have control of at least half our brain, probably more than that. The subconscious mind is processing messages that we don't catch in the conscious mind. And when a physical hand or any body part of another creature is put on your body to harm you, it simply puts you in that fight, flight, freeze mode. It
Mhm.
puts you in that mostly fight mode. It creates that feeling of a need to defend yourself physically, because you're being harmed physically. And I think that's the worst message you can send in punishing a child, because of course they're going to miss the message of the discipline, but you're going to create violent patterns in their behavior going forward in their life. So I always say, choose an instrument and stick with it, whatever it is. For me, as small as my children are, we use plastic or wooden rulers, mostly plastic because we don't want splinters. Plastic rulers, and we hold with two fingers. So it shows you, like, once the ruler comes out, now you know it's discipline time. Now you know that a disciplinary situation has occurred. And you can see them look up, pay attention, eyes get wide, no matter what's on the TV, no matter what treats are around, they get focused when the ruler comes out, because it says this is a disciplinary moment and you need to pay attention so as to avoid discipline. So if we choose an instrument and stick with it, you don't have to use it as often, because it helps send the message. It is I call it, affectionately with my wife, I call it the microphone. She'll be fussing at the boys, do this, sit down, do this. I said, they can't hear you because you don't have your microphone. If you
Yeah.
pull that
Yeah.
out, then they know, okay, I have to listen because I'm breaking some rule. I'm doing something that's out of line. I don't know what it is, because they're 4 or 5. They don't know that running around or playing whatever imaginary game they're playing is a problem unless you let them know. And hitting them is not the way to let them know. So you pull out the instrument, it shows them that a moment has occurred, and they can pay attention to what you will hopefully verbally articulate without ever having to use the instrument. Never punish emotionally, never punish mutely, never punish manually, and finally, never punish excessively. He was just beating the boy up. He was just beating the boy up. It was way too much force. Like I said, we put it in between two fingers. There's no way for me to muster that much force between these two fingers, because I'm not trying to hurt you or get you back for whatever you did wrong. I'm really trying to just send a message that what's happening right now never happens at any other time, because I need you to not do what you just did, which you normally don't do. So those are the four that I think that I am standing on myself. Never punish mutely, never punish manually, never punish emotionally, and never punish excessively. And if you can do those things, I think that corporal punishment can be used in a beneficial way. Again, you just have to pay very close attention to how the child receives it and what kind of personality type they are.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And I really like the fact that you broke it down like that, because I'm not sure, do people even truly think about it, really process it? Because most of the time I think it's more of a reaction. Now, don't get me wrong now. I know sometimes children do some things and you have, you have to react, there's even no time to respond. But I'm just saying, just in general, it's kind of like, what are the rules in the house when it comes to discipline? What's the rule of the child when it comes to discipline? And also, kind of going back to what you were talking about, like the different personalities of your children and things like that, and kind of how you are. One thing that I have heard parents say is that their children are teaching them. It's kind of like how to be. And one thing about my thing about self-care, because I have like two platforms, one self-care for Black men and the other one is conscious sharing, but they all about self-care, is that just really the different things that you do to take care of yourself, and part of it is that healing piece of it. And like you were kind of going back to what you were saying, healing parts of yourself that you probably didn't even realize that needed to be healing, and even face certain parts that you didn't even realize, and to do things just completely different. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes I don't think that some, again, not all parents, because I think for the most part, I think that parents do a wonderful job. You know what I'm saying? But, when it comes to corporate punishment, I agree with you totally. Definitely look at the child, because of the fact the personality of the child, I feel like, can really set the pace. Because even if you think about the love language, um,
Yeah.
I can I can remember one of my friends, she was telling me where I can't remember what she said her child had did, but her child is really sensitive as well. And her child had did something, and her child just stopped, was like, "Mommy, don't you love me?" You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of like, and then she stopped. And again, is one of those things, is like, she normally doesn't beat her child anyway. And sometimes we end up doing things because our parents did it and we might have didn't think about it. But you realize again that sometimes what may work for one child may not work for the other. And I think that is really, really, really important.
Yeah, it's important to pay attention to that, and really, you gotta pay attention to the personality type of the child. That love language part is I like that a lot too. Knowing exactly what gets through to them. Maybe we need punishment languages or something. I don't know, discipline languages. But I think also it's good to one thing I wanted to say is it's good to really prescribe. That's the word I want to use. Prescribe the exact type of punishment that goes along with the type of offense. That way that helps them discipline themselves when the system that is standardized is in place. So that's very important. But on that piece that you were saying about not just doing things the way our parents did, that's very important to know that. I mean, I've had to, a lot of times in my short time being a father, I've had to confront myself and say, am I Erick or am I James? That's my father. Am I him or am I me?
Exactly.
And then knowing, understanding also that, am I raising Erick or am I raising Samuel? you know. So I thinking about all of these people, and we won't even get into how fluid a single person is, because I'm not the same person I was a year ago, 5 years ago, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to just stay attentive to who they are and who they're becoming, or otherwise you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes anyway, but you're going to make mistakes that really could be avoided if you're not being very attentive to those things. So the last thing I wanted to say about what you said was that what another thing that my wife and I say a lot is that the only discipline is discipline. The only way to discipline is through discipline. I can only discipline you by having self-discipline, because our children, especially our children, we homeschool. And right now during coronavirus, everybody is in the house with their kids a lot more than normal. They are picking up on every single thing we do, and we are the only people they're picking up from.
Mm-hmm.
So biggest and actually easiest, we're just trying to make this simple for you, right? The easiest way to get the responses and the behaviors you want out of your child is to focus on exhibiting those behaviors yourself. If I exhibit self-control with the ice cream and I get a scoop and then put it back in the fridge, then that helps them understand that self-control is not just a thing daddy talks about. It's a thing that all the big, cool, grown people do all the time. So when you exhibit those behaviors, it makes it a lot easier for them to catch on to what you're saying with words. Because especially at a young age, kids don't know these words. So it's important to use them so they can start to learn how to communicate. But when I'm telling you, you need self-control, you need portion control or judgment, or, don't be so impulsive in things. They don't know those words. They don't know any words bigger than 4 or 5 letter words. They're still getting cat, rat, hat. So that's why I do think corporal punishment has a place, because I can use a plastic ruler and a tap that's this light
Yeah.
on the hand without hurting you or causing you to cry, to help you zoom in, focus, and understand that your behavior is out of line right now. And then you can continue to be attentive to what daddy is teaching you, so that we can get this message across to you. But right now, you might not know the words to understand that you're being ungrateful for what your mama did right now, or whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it has usefulness, but we have to really, like you said, do a lot of healing ourselves, a lot of disciplining ourselves, for it to be something that is not perpetuating all of the mental and emotional illnesses that we have inherited as our only inheritance from slavery. We really gotta check that, or the all the gains we're making in all the other areas will eventually fall to the ground.
Yeah, most definitely. And then also too, another part of self-care is just our everyday self-care needs. It's kind of like, what do we need right now? Because sometimes, you know how sometimes you hear the little saying, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Or it could be where at that particular moment you could be irritated or irritable, or you could be worried about something, or you could be hungry. Hunger can make you, what I'm saying, irritable. Because I know with me, definitely, if I don't get my sleep, and if I don't eat, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had to take a nap before this interview because it wasn't gonna go well. When I looked up at 2:30, I was like, this is not gonna go well. So I had to lay down for a minute. You're right though. It's very
Yeah,
important.
yeah. And
Even when you
so,
build that up for the other people out there, it requires you to be in a place where you're in a good space yourself. That's a very good point.
yeah, most definitely. And the reason I want to make sure I'm saying these things out loud, because what I've come to realize, even by being a therapist, and just on a personal level, is just that sometimes we just don't say things out loud enough. It's kind of like, this is for everybody, but it's not just for people, quote unquote, when you're talking about mental illness. It's about our mental wellness, the things that we do on a regular basis that can keep us all healthy, and also keep those who we interact with when it comes to our family. Like I have, niece and nephews and godchildren. There are different ages now. That some of them are adults and some of them are little ones. But just kind of like where we are, within ourselves and how we're taking care of ourselves, and just how precious children can be. And the other thing that I want to kind of take note of, because you point on it a little bit too, is just kind of like the messages that, a child could be given. And that is really important as well because of the fact, even sometimes with good intentions, you just never know what message the child got,
Right. Right.
you know?
Yeah, and that is a big. That's why it's so important to pay attention to who they are, because that will tell you how they listen. Something that I ran across about maybe 6 or 7 years ago was the idea of listening styles. I was training to be a health consultant, and the trainer, Dr. Africa, brought up listening styles, and it was something that resonated with me a lot, because I can have a message that is primed perfectly. I can, edit it and practice it and rehearse it. And, all my public speaking things are all in line, but there are still certain people from the crowd who will catch it and some who won't. So
Yeah.
when you're dealing with kids, I mean, I have a crowd here, but we have to give that individual time to making sure we find out how you listen and making sure I'm crafting the message in a way that you pick it up. For instance, my oldest child, he's very auditory as a learner, as a listener. So he's the child I can explain a concept to with words without showing him on paper, without making pictures, without letting him get involved in it with his hands. I can tell it to him and he gets it. And that's why, again, he's the one I brought up earlier, who is the very talkative one. He wants explanations for everything. So because I had him first, because I was introduced to fatherhood through him, that's the mode I kind of got into with raising kids. So by the time my third came along and my oldest was 3, I was used to disciplining with words as much as I possibly can, talking things out. Well, my third is not that way at all. He's the one he needs a hug, a kiss on the head, and a pat on the back before he hears anything you're saying, because he's very affectionate that way. So he's the one who taught me a lot about physical affection being okay. And like you said earlier, I'm learning a lot from my kids, but you have to learn their listening style and know, okay, every time that I gave this speech about what not to do in the living room, you heard it, but didn't get it, and you weren't paying any attention because you didn't care what I say until I hugged you. So once you learn them, you really know how to put the same message in different formats for the people, for how the person accepts it.
Yeah. And then just by you explaining that, first thing that popped up in my mind was his love language. You weren't
Yeah.
speaking his love language.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to hear anything because you weren't speaking his love language. He need his hug.
Yeah, you're right. I think if I had to say so, my oldest is quality time. He's all about like taking the
Hmm.
time to talk him
Yeah.
through these things, and do it with him, and whatever that is. And he likes critiques and criticisms. Let him know how he did. My third, he likes the physical affection, like touch him, hug him, let him know. My second, the judicial one, I call him Judge Jeremiah. He he's fine getting a gift. Like if he can do something and then get a reward, I got some candy, that he knows what to do and what not to do from now on. So again, I've never thought about that until you said it on this interview, but I really like that idea that knowing their love language and knowing your own can really help you communicate discipline to your kids better.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it helps them to receive the message, that you're intended to receive. Because if not, sometimes, 20, 30 years later, they still have something, that you did not intend
Mhm.
stuck in their head. And that's how a lot of us are. Not to say that that's not going to happen anyway with some of the messages, but it does. It can, because the mind is just, whew, it's,
Yeah,
I'll just put it like this. I always say the mind and the body is a mystery, and we only know what we know, and we're still learning.
all right. I'm sorry, I got a helpful big one here. Thank you, sir. Don't close my door, okay? You want to say hey? Oh, yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Grandma. Her name is
How
Sharon.
are you? Good. Nice meeting you.
All right. Let me go close the door, okay? Go play.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, he likes to get involved in whatever's going. Close the door. Thank you. Yeah, so just getting to know them and really paying attention to yourself helps you not. Because my parents had those things too. Very good parents, and I'm extremely grateful. But they they are people, you know, and we're all on this learning process, and that's why I felt it's so important to speak what I'm learning about corporal punishment in particular. But that's kind of what the platform is about. Is I'm hoping to just share what I'm learning in the process with other men, especially black and brown men, especially men of African American descent, sharing with us what's necessary for us to be those pillars that are needed in our homes and in our communities. Because it's not easy. Like my fatherly heritage is, you know, my father's father. He never spent any time with them, with my father's family, and with his mother. Never spent any time with them. Had a family in the same city, and I told you I'm from Mississippi, so there are no big ones. You know what I mean? And he was in the
Mm-hmm.
same city, but he never spent time with my dad. And so
Mm-hmm.
for my dad to not just stick around and stay present, but to be active in my life until I was an adult. I mean, it's not that he's not now, but you know, to be active the whole time, that is huge for me. And he made strides, but I know it was difficult. And I know he had to pick up on a lot of things from the men that he was around.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that how important that is and knowing how much I've had to do it myself, I know that there are a lot of men out there who are really trying to pick up on what parenthood, fatherhood is. And hopefully what we're putting out is educating somebody or at least putting something on your mind to go with you into that arena that is parenthood.
Yeah, most definitely. And like I said, pretty much what resonated with me was pretty much the steps that you had listed, and especially the way that you really were detailed about it. It's kind of like, you're not just only just said, the thing about what was it? The never use your bare hands and never waste your words and never discipline emotionally or way too much force. You also went into details of like the impact that it has. And so it can give people a framework of at least some things to think about, because sometimes people are thinking about right now, I need this behavior to stop right now. But in order for the next behavior to stop, sometimes having, and trying to do things in the person's love language and trying to have more compassion and doing something different or which they're going to understand. Because the other thing that you were saying too, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but I just say in general, it's like if we keep not yelling, but if we keep saying stop that, stop that, stop that, the kid is not going to stop until we get up and go over there. And there has to be something over there because they learn to ignore it. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
know when I used to work with children, I tell, the parents about one, two, three. And even when I babysit it, I did that too. And sometimes it can, quote unquote, be a little game. They say, oh, she's getting one, two, three. But they knew when I get on three, I get up. I don't have to do anything. But you have to, whether if they're right on the wall, you get up and you get the crown out of their hand and move them away from the wall and they stop. Yeah, you may have to do it 3 or 4 times, but then eventually they'll test you a little bit. You know what I mean? And they'll, you say one, two, and they'll stop.
Yeah.
But that's how they learn. So it does work, but it only works if you're active in it. But if you're just saying stop, 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 or you're just saying one, two, three, and you're sitting there, nah,
Yeah.
it's not gonna work.
Purpose though, you're getting their attention, and that's what I think the only real usefulness of corporal punishment is and can be is to get the child's attention so that you can communicate a message to them. If you're using it because I'm trying to teach you a lesson, the a ruler can't teach a lesson. If it could, then in the measuring units in school, they would just set the ruler in front of us. It can't teach us a lesson. People teach us lessons. And
That's
so there are
true.
so many ways to teach lessons, and the ruler is not it. For that example you said about writing on the wall, we have that problem, And what I like to do, I don't whip for that because nobody was hurt. Nothing was damaged. This is a material thing. And I never want to send the message that a material loss is equal to an emotional or physical loss. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime anything is broken, written on it, like that's never whipping time. But what I will do is force you to stop playing, let all your brothers keep playing, and you're going to stand right here beside this mark on the wall until I finish cleaning it off,
Hmm.
however long that takes. And you're gonna watch me do it, and then I'm gonna give you this long speech that you hate the whole time that your kids or that your brothers are in there playing the game you want to be a part of or whatever it is. There are ways to send messages other than hitting children. And I want to make sure I'm conveying the message that there is a right and wrong way to do it. But the biggest part of the right way to do it is to not use it as discipline. It is a tool used in discipline. Corporal punishment is what I'm talking about when I say it. It's a tool used in discipline, but corporal punishment itself is not discipline. And I hope that as parents, we can really make that transition, make that shift, so that we aren't whipping people to teach lessons, but rather taking the time to teach those lessons.
Yeah, and I really like the way that you distinguish that too. And I think that that is really powerful, very, very powerful. Whereas getting close to our time, that hour marking with Instagram, it will cut you off.
Okay. Well,
So, do
thank
you
you.
have any last words? I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really do appreciate it, Eric. Do you have any last words that you'd like to say before we end?
If to anyone watching, I hope you will check out our platforms. Mine is a Brown father. My wife's is a Brown mother, and our goal is only to share what we're learning in our parenting process with other young or old parents out there. Anyone who has any contact with kids is a learning curve, and we have to do that together, just like we have to get our economics and everything else together. Together, we have to learn how to get our homes together as a unit, as a community. So we want that. We want you to be a part of that community. Let us know how we can help you. And thank you, Sharon, so much for the platforms and how what you're putting out there, how much it's helping Black men, Black people, and just humanity. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate this conversation.
All right, well, thank you again, and you're so welcome.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
You too.